right, we are going to go and we're going to look at how we calculate out some of this stuff in software. And the first software that we are going to calculate is we're going to do a bunch of stuff in Excel. So we're going to need some data, so let's go to our module for today's class. And what we want to grab is we want to grab example 3.1. So I'm just going to download that to my downloads folder. And then I am going to open it. So I'm going to show this in the folder. Let me bring this over so you can see it. And so we got data example 3.1 Connecticut house prices. And so I'm going to open this up and let's take a look at what I have. First of all, this is going to be a CSV file. Now, your thing may pop up and tell you it's a CSV file. Mine is not, but I do know that it's an Excel file. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to go File and Save As. And the reason that I want to save it as because I want to change the file. And so I'm going to go here to Browse to a different location because I want to leave it in my Downloads folder. And so it's telling me it downloads as a CSV file, comma delimited. If I look at this icon here, because by default, the Windows, just like Mac, will hide the extension, and it kind of goes based on the icon. Now, this icon is telling you it opens in Excel, but this is not an Excel file because it's got the A and the comma next to it. That denotes that it's a CSV file. If it was an Excel file, we'd see little cells there. And so the way that I change the file is I don't just change the file extension because that's not going to do anything. I want to go to Save As Type. I click on here, and this shows me all the different types of files that I can save this through Excel. We're just going to go right here up to the top, which is Excel Workbook. We'll click on that, and now you can see this is showing me all my Excel workbooks in my download folder. You can see how the icon's different. Now we've got the little cells here instead of the A. These are Excel files. So I'm going to hit Save. And so now it's an Excel workbook, and excuse me, all these equations that I'm about to run will actually stay. If I take a CSV file and I do not have it saved as an Excel file, then none of the equations will get saved because the CSV file can only save numbers, characters, and commas. So first of all, we look at this. This is not an error because you can see there's data there. This just means that the column's not wide enough. So the first thing we're going to do to fix this is I'm going to highlight all of this stuff. I'm going to put my cursor right there where I get the change. I'm going to double click and have it extend out. And I'd pause the video there because my grandfather clock was going out. So what are we looking at here? These are all of the house sales that were sold within the state of Connecticut in the year 2020. At least that were listed in 2020. So we've got a serial number, listing year, date recorded, town, address. Property type, we've got a couple different property types in here. We have apartments, we have vacant land, we have commercial stuff. That's all fine. Let's talk about what these numbers here mean. Assessed value, sale amount, sales ratio. Sale amount's the easy one. This is what price the house was sold for. Easy enough. The assessed value is the value of the house that you pay taxes on. Now, typically, the sale amount is going to be twice what the assessed value is. You're looking at it because really nobody's going to pay. You're not going to be able to sell a house for the assessed value. That's not the way the market works. Fortunately, for those of us that pay taxes, the assessed value is a lot lower than the fair market value. And so the sales ratio here, that is just telling you what percentage of the sale amount the assessed value is. So this number should be typically around 50%. Occasionally you see some out here that, like down here on this commercial one, that's at 92%. Up here, this Upton one is at 92%. That's kind of atypical. So let's quickly go, and I'm going to take these two. I want to format them so they're easy to read. I'm just going to stick it into the dollar format. And then I don't need the decimals. We're not using them. I'm just going to use this and decrease the amount of decimals to where you just got numbers. And then on sales ratio, I'm going to click over here. I'm going to switch that to percentage, and then I'm going to upscale that. And so that way we can we can kind of take a look at things. Now, how many records do we have? Because we're going to run some statistics on this. Go all the way down. We've got almost 67,000 records. That's a lot of data. So if we were dealing with the sales amount and then we went, okay, you know what? I'm going to do the mean of the data, which in Excel would be average. Now, you can completely type out average here. You can find average and double click on it to make it work. Or what you'll see, what I end up doing a lot is I'll start typing it in. I use the down arrow key to go which one I'm looking for, and I hit tab, and that auto-fills it in. Any of those are fine. So I get to this point, and it's like, oh, I need to select all the data. I click here and drag down. I got to go to 66,000 and something to get there. So this actually takes minutes. It's not any fun. Now, I could go down to the end and go, okay, I know it's 66,700 something. Write that number down and just, come over here and type this into the cell. That doesn't work so well either. So I'm going to show you a different way of doing it. One thing that I will caution you against, a lot of times you'll go, oh, I will just do that and do the entire column. A couple reasons why you don't want to do that. One, there's words in there sometimes, like sale amount. Sometimes the equation will work, sometimes it will not. Two, especially when you have big data sets, a lot of time there's notes at the end, and there'll be numbers or other text or something at the end. So it's kind of a sloppy way of doing things, especially if somebody adds data at the bottom of it that's not supposed to get rolled in. So we only want to select the data that we're actually going to use. So we're going to use this concept of what's called a range name. So a range name is basically a way to rename a cell. So let's put some data in here. And I look at this cell. If I look over here in this corner, this box is called the name box. That tells me that cell's name is K3. That is a cell reference it'll index. If I drag rows and columns, that will change. Well, we can give the cell another name. We can call it Bob. Now you see the name there is Bob. Now, it's also still K3. Sorry, K2. No, it is K3. Because K3 is still, that's what the cell's mom calls it. So it'll be K3, but all of his friends call him Bob. So when I go to make a equation now, so if I click over here and when I click on K3, sorry, you see that it comes up as the equation says Bob. It's color coded. In fact, it's got the symbol here for range name, the little cells there. So now if I go and I drag that down, you'll see that it stays too, because Bob's not a cell reference. It doesn't index. Nothing's going to change on it. And so that's a handy thing, but you can still force the cell to index because I can type in K3 and you can see that it highlights to the same box. And then when I drag that down, that ends up changing because now it's indexed. So range names are a handy thing. There's some stuff that we'll do when we go to calculate things off that if they don't have a range name, it'll say like variable 1. But if you have a range name, it'll put the range name in. So I'm a big proponent of range names, especially in big data sets like this. So now what I need to do is I need to create range names for these things. And so I could highlight everything and do that. But I'm going to show you another way of doing it. Now, especially when we're dealing with large data sets, this method, we really should start at the bottom. And the reason is if we start at the top and do this, if there's blank data, it's going to hit the data and it's going to stop. That way, if we start from the bottom, if it hits a blank spot, we can just force it to go through. So what I want you to do, scroll all the way to the bottom here. And we're going to do range names for all these. So highlight everything all at once. You're going to hold the control key. The control key allows you to select different rows. Basically make a multi-select. You want to hold the shift key, which basically means that it's going to highlight, if we tell it to use the up arrow, it's going to highlight everything. And then you hit the up arrow. And so you can see that we're selecting, 9 rows and, 9 columns and 66,000 rows. If there was a blank spot there, it would have stopped. We would just keep hitting the up arrow. That's why we're holding shift to hit all the way to the top. And so from here, what we want to do is we want to go to formulas. And so right here is the name manager. This is what saves all these range names that we made. We are going to click on create from selection. And so now you can see this box comes up and it's like, okay, I'll create range names. Do you want me to create the names from the values in the top row because there's words there? That's what we want to do. And it's also, oh, you got words in the right column. Do you want us to make range names of the rows? That one we don't want to do. Because the thing is these are all repeated, so there's residential, vacant land and stuff. What'll happen is it'll take this and it will name this residential, and then it will go to the next one and go, oh, and it'll ask you, do you want to overwrite residential? And it'll keep doing that. So it'll take you forever to get through this. We just want the top row. We're going to say okay. And it seems like nothing happened, but that's fine. I'm going to scroll all the way back up here to the top. Now, if I go to Name Manager, you're going to see, oh, look, there's all the, including Bob, there's all the range names that we just created. So a couple things. Notice this range name, date recorded, had a space. The range name has an underscore, because range names can't have spaces, and they also can't be other cell references. So if I look at this date recorded, you'll see this little bit of code here. That's our sheet name, data example 3.1, Connecticut house price with the exclamation point. That's the name of our sheet down here. And then it tells us the cells. And the dollar signs are there, so it's locked in. So C2 will never change, and C66,593 will never change. And then we'll just close that. And so now, if I want to do the mean, I'm going to do the average price. So there's my average. I'm going to drop the range name in there instead of highlighting things. So I'm going to start typing the range name, and you'll see they pop up. The f of x is a formula. The little tic-tac-toe boards are a range name. So we want to do sale amount. I will hit space. I will close that up, and you can see it's all highlighted, and hit enter. So there's our average house price. In fact, let's go to the home. Let's go to the home screen. I'm going to use the format painter here. I'm going to click on that, and we're just going to format the number in the same way. So the average house price in Connecticut from that year, 2020, was $604,964. All right, so let's go and let's quickly look at the standard deviation. So if I'm going to go stdev, which is the code for standard deviation in Excel. As I look at things, though, I'm going to see there's a couple different ones here. So these ones down at the bottom with the little warning sign next to them, those are legacy functions. They're old functions and still work, but we don't want to use those. The stdev-a, stdev-pa, that's stuff to do with logical functions. We're going to ignore those. Where we're going to live is these two right here. stdev.p, stdev.s, standard deviation of the population, standard deviation of the sample. We're just always going to default to standard deviation of the sample because that's usually what we're dealing with. This would be the case where we probably could use the population because I'm pretty sure that we've got all the data, but let's just stay with the sample. And then it needs a bunch of numbers. So once again, we're going to drop in sale amount. And I'm going to close that off. We will hit enter to execute that. And then I forgot to put my title in there. So I want to physically just move this cell. So if I highlight the ed where we get the little cross, I can move that over. Moving a cell doesn't index it, so that's all fine. And that makes life a little bit easier. So if you ever have a big equation typed and you're worried about having the indexing, just grab it and move it. We'll put stdev here. So we know the standard deviation, and we will format painter this. All right, so we have a mean of 604,000. We have a standard deviation of 19.5 million. Just by looking at this, we can probably tell this is not going to be a symmetrical distribution because we have to go 3 standard deviations away. That will encapsulate all the data. So 3 standard deviations would be $60 million. And so that'd be way negative. So obviously, I think we're going to find that this is heavily skewed to the right or to the positive side. All right, so this is the end for mean and standard deviation. In the next video, we'll go into 5-number summary.